Jeanmarie has worked as a hydrogeologist in Arizona for 29 years. She worked the past 14 years with the Arizona Nature Conservancy, where she provides scientific leadership on conservation and natural resource issues related to surface water and groundwater hydrology. Before that, she was with the esteemed Errol Montgomery and Associates. She advises, in her capacity at TNC, she advises conservation teams and external stakeholders and partners on the application of hydrologic concepts, models, data, and analyses, and she collaborates with other scientists and institutions to enhance conservation practices. And I have to credit TNC for doing some of the earliest work in the 1970s to really alert people to the value of the Cienega grasslands and the Cienega riparian areas.
Yeah, we water, sometimes it's flowing for a short time, sometimes it's permanent. And where it's permanent, we have groundwater to thank for that. And so I'm going to cover some of those aspects. I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room how important these perennial waters are in the Cienega Basin. They're very limited in extent, but very important to the critters that live there, and including some of the land-based mammals as well as the aquatic and riparian species. And you know, the willows and cottonwoods, I don't think I need to tell anybody here too about the many management concerns we have in keeping these systems functional so that everyone can enjoy them, plants, animals, two-legged critters like us. So when you talk about management of these lands, there's some management questions that are pretty specific to water. And I'm going to kind of try to orient my presentation around, you know, we do science, and that's great. Science should be the basis of decision-making and management. And I'm going to orient this discussion of groundwater science towards some management questions to the extent possible, such as what is changing out there on the land, what's getting drier, what might be getting wetter if it does, you know, how can we influence those changes? And you know, in the case of things we can't control, like climate change and a large extent increased water use, we don't have a lot of control over that. How can we prepare for those changes that are coming about because of things we can't control? And what can be the relative effectiveness of various management actions? And so, with respect to groundwater, you know, one of the things I think we all have, most of us, you know, we probably all have a pretty good understanding that water moves from areas of recharge, which is typically the higher terrain where it rains more and where it snows, you know, below the surface to a discharge point such as a wetland or a perennial reach of river. And that if you put a well in here, you intersect some of that water that's going to that discharge location. And another thing that we might not think about quite as much is there are different groundwater paths. There are different paths that groundwater can take. This example is more of an eastern terrain, but I think it kind of gets the point across that from the recharge area here and along the slopes, you can have recharge near the stream, along the floodplain that's pretty short travel path. You can have recharge up in the upland area. It can take a much longer travel path, and you can have your aquifer frequently has different layering in it, so you can have different transmissivities or the ability of the water to move through. You know, a coarser portion of the aquifer is much easier, and a confining bed restricts water movement. So you can have deeper paths that can take years, centuries, or even millennia. So these travel paths, you know, where is the recharge and how's it traveling are two really key elements to understanding the source of water and the mechanisms that support perennial water at the surface. And in this basin, this is a typical basin in the range kind of area where you've got faulting that drops down, a basin that's then, you know, it uplifts the mountain block and drops down the basin area, and sediments have been shed from the mountain block to the basin. So we call this basin fill, and this is the mountain block. And there's major locations for recharge in the mountain block, actually seeping into the fractures, and snowmelt especially seeping into the fractures and moving down into the basin fill that way. There's a lot of recharge along mountain fronts where there's coarser grained material and probably some fracturing and induced secondary permeability due to the faulting that drops down the basin and lifts the mountain. And then you can get enough rain or snow melt for water to flow out across the basin fill. The recharge occurs along ephemeral channels and when they flow. And then along the floodplain, when there's high flows, there'll be recharge along the floodplain, which can be referred to as bank recharge. And then, there's different layers here. There could be there often are clay layers out more towards the center of the basin, which can affect how water is, surface water is showing up. And this is a portion of a map done by Wade Osterkamp back in 1973, groundwater recharge in the Tucson area. He's retired from the USGS. And this is the Cienega Basin area, and with Sonoita Creek coming down here in the Babo out this direction. And he shows mountain front recharge and kind of relative percent, and this is in acre-feet per mile of recharge along mountain front. Now he doesn't show channel recharge on this map, but I talked to him about this, and he says, sure, there's some channel recharge out there. It's just relative to the larger Tucson Basin, and the big rivers like Santa Cruz and Narito, it wasn't enough to really show on this map. So he really focused on the mountain front recharge, and this color shows the highest volume of recharge, and this color the next highest, and then the lower volume of recharge is 0 to 50 acre-feet per mile. And so this tells me there's just really this area right along the highest point of the Santa Ritas is where the most recharge is likely entering the system. The other interesting thing this map shows is he shows the location of the groundwater divide here between groundwater going north along the Cienega Creek watershed versus coming down to the Sonoita Creek and Babo Kamari. And because there's a number of pumping wells in this area, it's a very shallow divide. Sure, this groundwater divide gets moved around a bit by the pumping, and it's hard to discern exactly where it is because it's so shallow in all the pumping. If you did a groundwater level sweep, measured a whole bunch of water levels on a whole bunch of wells all across the Sonoita region here, when they weren't pumping, you could maybe draw that divide, but it would probably be a little squirrely because of drawdown cones associated with various wells and pumping centers. But that's about where it is. So this is a nice picture of the Cienega Basin looking across Cienega towards these high mountains that provide the highest precipitation and considerable amount of the recharge. And then looking across these swales where the water will concentrate and infiltrate and out on the basin fill in the valley bottoms, the recharge that does occur typically occurs in these drainages where the water gathers and concentrates. Let's see. So what we know, we actually do know a number of things because there's been quite a bit of research done, and back in the mid-90s there was a spurt of U of A studies, master's theses that were done on the Cienega Basin. Before that, there was Animax and various mining companies, Gulf American, doing drill holes and doing pumping tests on the wells. And so we know some things such as, we know the general basic geometry pretty well. And the surface geology has been mapped in most of the areas across the basin and in the bedrock around the basin. We know where surface water occurs, at least in large part to the wet-dry mapping, though certainly there are springs up in the mountains that we don't know where they all are or what their current condition is. But along the main part of the drainage, Cienega and its main tributaries like Empire Gulch, we have a pretty good understanding where surface water occurs in June, driest part of the year. Because of monitoring that's been done by Hagapine County, the BLM, of groundwater and surface water, we've got a pretty good idea of those trends through the last decade or two. We know that the climate's warming, there's ample evidence for that globally and in the Southwest. And we know it's dry. There's not a lot of really tall, huge mountains around here. There's a few sky islands that are pretty high, but overall we know it's fairly semi-arid climate, dry and drying, and the human water use is increasing. So just go through a few things that we know. Whoops. The general basic geometry. This is from a 1996 thesis with, he was a grad student at U of A, and he took this from a DWR map. So it's just a basin-wide map from the Delta Hills all the way down to Tucson. And there's, so here's the upper basin, the NCA area. Here's the lower basin, the Cienega Creek, Haney County Preserve. And then there's this kind of gap area in between where we don't know as much because there hasn't been the number of studies that there have been in the NCA and the Haney County Preserve. This also shows groundwater level elevation contours with groundwater movement going basically down the valley here.
Jeanmarie, where are we?
Oh,
Right now?
right out here somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, right around in there. Sure, thank you for asking. So we know something about the faulting and geology, especially the geology. This is all geologic mapping through here, and there's also geologic map that covers the basin fill and the age of the surfaces across the alluvial surfaces across the valley. And back in 1976, Basin did an analysis of gravity data, and so these dark kind of grayish lines here are large faulting systems that he interpreted from the gravity data. And so the Sawmill Canyon fault zone, from the gravity data, at least it comes across. So these, I think a lot of these big fault zones were originally active in the Precambrian, and they're down in the bedrock, and they've been reactivated through later times. And there's another big one here and here, and so there's some basin bounding faults. Also, there's probably a lot more faults, smaller faults out in the basin, fill more recent faults that maybe didn't show up as much in the gravity. But we've got a pretty good idea of some of the major fault systems. And this was, an interpretation a while back. It might be nice to have some more geophysical data and do more recent interpretations. And we know where it's wet, thanks to the wet-dry mapping data collected by PAG and BL19C. And this map was made by Mike List at Haney County IT, which is a really nice map because it compiles all the data from the upper basin and the lower basin. And these are years. So this is 2006, and the blue is where it's wet year after year after year, always wet. And the black is where it's wet some years, but not every year. And this goes from 2006 to 2014, with each column showing a year. And one thing you can see here is that it is drying out through the years that we've been mapping. The reaches are getting shorter. There's some kind of reaches that have kind of dried up. And you can also see that it's getting drier faster in the lower basin than in the upper basin. And so the wet reaches some of them are reducing in length, and some of them have gone away altogether, the shorter ones. And also, at particular location, such as Marsh Station in the Pima County Preserve, the volume of discharge has been decreasing through the years. We've been in a 15-year drought, is pretty common knowledge. So, and plus it's been warming since the 60s, the climate has been warming. So this is what we've been observing. And this is to look at the kind of the groundwater surface water connection near the stream. This is in an NCA. This is Empire Spring Flow Station. Jeanmarie made this graph here, and he does a lot of the hydrologic monitoring that takes place in the Las Vegas NCA, as well as over in San Pedro. And this shows in red and blue as the groundwater levels in the data logger there next to the creek in the spring. And then you can see it when the spring flow goes up, probably because of snow melt or precipitation events here in the spring. The groundwater level goes up and the spring water goes up, so the spring discharge goes up. So, near stream, there's quite a close connection between groundwater and spring flow. What we'd like to know more about, there's quite a few things that we know a little bit about and we'd like to know more about. The distribution of recharge is one of those things. Where is water entering the surface? What are those flow paths, that I was showing before? Which surface water areas that, springs and cienegas and wetlands and permanent reaches of the stream, or what kind, are they supported more by water coming up from the deeper travel paths or the shallower travel paths? Are there clay layers that are holding up the shallow water and it's just recharged along the floodplain that's supporting a lot of that water? And all this it's really important in management decisions, and it also because it can also help you understand the impact of groundwater pumping on surface water features, as well as what you can do with management actions to favor more recharge and, you know, through management actions and more support of those continuing functions of those areas. Both current, and for groundwater pumping, you know, groundwater pumping that's happened in the past, in some cases hasn't even shown up, in many cases hasn't shown up yet. So we want to understand both the past, the current, and the future implications and expected, predictions of that. So what we're doing to know more about what we don't know enough about is, and we being many of you in this room, and we are working to interpret the rich literature. There's many reports, maps, cross-sections, pumping tests and drillers' logs I was talking about for a lot of these old wells, the mining company wells, isotope studies, past and ongoing, geophysical surveys. We're trying to sleuth out what exists, and then we look at what continuing studies need to be done. Might we need some more geophysical surveys, and can we find the funding for that? Or the isotope studies, there's a group of Des Botanical Garden U of A folks that are working to the isotope studies in PAG and King County have been doing some also down in the lower basin. So, and all of this works towards building a conceptual model for the Cienega Creek Basin, which is a necessary precursor to any sort of mathematical groundwater model, such as mod flow. The better conceptual model you have, the better your groundwater model can then be, the more certain. And just an example, this is a little conceptual model that I put together for the lower San Pedro, because I was like, these blue spots, this is a plan view map, just looking down from above. It goes from like the Narrows, below Basin, down to the Gila River. And there's wet spots, there's wet locations along the river, and some of them are more dependably wet than others. And I was like, why are they there? And I started thinking about the subsurface and reviewing the reports and also what I observed out in the field. And so basically what this is, if you take this stream here and just stretch it out straight and then take a cut straight down into the earth, this is my very simplified conceptualization of what that subsurface looks like, which explains why these wet places are here. It's a combination of bedrock, shallow bedrock, and clay layers that either push the water up to the surface on top of the clay, on top of the bedrock, or allow, when the clay layer ends, this is downstream, when the clay layer ends in the downstream direction, allows water to well up to the surface. And so I've been working on starting something similar for the Cienega Creek, and this is, again, you take Cienega Creek from Pinellas Hills down to the USGS Pantano gauge, and you stretch it out straight, take a cut through it. This is just very preliminary, my beginning sketch, of just the rough elements, where you've got bedrock in Pinellas Hills, some limestone, and some volcanics, and then you come down through the basin where the NCA is, you've got basin fill, and then you go back, and these are some of the locations here. Empire Gulch and Gardner Canyon are about right in here. You see the little wet reaches in blue. And you go back into some bedrock, then you cross back into a little basin around I-10, and then you cross back over into the Pima County Preserve area with its various, very complicated assemblage of different geologies, which are not well represented here. I was just trying to sketch in that there's various geologies, and this can be developed out to a lot more detail with geologic maps and drill holes and such, and that's what we are working towards. And this is this thing from the Middle San Pedro. A USGS report came out just recently, and they've spent like 3, 4, 5 years building a conceptual model for the Middle San Pedro. This is a cross-section across the valley. This is a longitudinal section down the valley from around the Tombstone gauge down to the Reddington gauge. And this is the precursor to, hopefully we'll get funded to build a mathematical model, but they've spent many years, at least 5, as I recall, doing the kind of investigation to fill in detail this conceptual model of where's the bedrock, where's the fine grain, interbedded fine and coarse grain, and where's the coarse grain, and where's the water table here. And they've taken data from all these wells. They've done geophysical surveys. So it's a very comprehensive data gathering, compilation, and integration effort to come up with a well-developed conceptual model we can then start building a mathematical model from. So we have recently formed a hydrology working group, and Dennis Caldwell has been helping a lot with organize this group, and basically everybody we could think of with the hydrology or biology background experience out in the Cienega, experience on the ground, seeing where's their water, how's that been changing through the years. Is invited, and we had our first meeting on May 8th, and great collaboration has begun through that process, and the various isotope efforts are they're really talking to each other, and we get the geologists helping out with interpreting the isotopes as we move down the road. We're really, it looks like we're really going to focus on isotopes in the subsurface stratigraphy to continue to develop this conceptual model. And so we welcome help of anybody who thinks they can contribute to the understanding of the subsurface and the surface conditions and why those conditions are like that and how they've changed through the years. And so I'm Jeanmarie Haney and my co-conspirator Gita Bodner, and contact us if you have any knowledge you want to share or meetings you want to attend meetings and such. So thank you. I have a little time for questions, right?
Yes, you do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was an earthquake in 1887. There's a lot of fractures and faults in this basin. What kind of effects do you get from seismic activity on those faults and fractures as far as groundwater storage and changing the directions it goes and stuff like that? I mean, is that a significant sort of thing in the basin?
I've heard that fault was big enough, that earthquake was big enough that it did change a number of things. Springs went dry, springs showed up that hadn't been there before. Groundwater levels in some cases dropped, in some cases came up. So yeah, I think it can make a big change. We haven't had a lot of opportunities to study it, since that one had some documentation on it. But the modern one, we learn a lot. But I don't know if we want that.
I don't understand why the hydrology group would be heading towards looking at drillers' logs and doing more stratigraphic when the USGS just came out with that. What would you be doing that would be...
So the USGS was for the Middle San Pedro,
yes.
And we'll be doing it here for the Cienega Creek Basin.
Okay.
Which I don't think the USGS has done any work here. I've not been able to find any USGS reports or work in the Cienega Basin.
So you're duplicating what they did, but over here.
Yeah,
okay.
Recreating, doing, that's kind of the standard process.
Effort.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thanks for that clarification.
Thanks.
Yeah, Karen.
So do you think that a lot of the surface flow in the upper Cienega Creek then, just based on your drawing, is from clay layers rather than bedrock?
I suspect is that around Empire Gulch and Gardner confluence, it is.
Yeah.
I think there must be some clay controls, but I'm just getting into this, and unfortunately, so far my look at the drillers' logs I was hoping all those Animax wells would have really great detailed logging, and unfortunately they tend to go like 600 feet of clay, or 600 feet of sand and gravel, or even intermixed. So I know there's clay there because of the field trip I went on where Jeff was talking about digging out the wetlands and the clay being found. So I took some way to figure out, to do some looking at how deep that clay is and where it is. It could really help with understanding. Julia.
Can you give us a sense of how long, especially based on your experience in the San Pedro Basin, how long does it take to put together this conceptual model, and then can you talk about the cost and time frame for putting together, a detailed three-dimensional model, digital model?
I've experienced. Okay, so I've experienced the process of USGS building a mathematical mod flow groundwater model in both the Middle San Pedro, the process leading up to that, and in the Verde watershed for the Northern Arizona Regional Groundwater Flow Model. And the Verde, the USGS worked at building the conceptual model for probably at least 4 years, and they issued a report on that. And then they took several years, 3 or 4 years more to build the mod flow model and issue a report on that. And I think the Verde folks, the Water Advisory Committee and the DWR contributed money, and the various folks have very contributed. I think it was around $1 million, roughly, you know, and through that process, maybe 1.2 million. And the San Pedro, I haven't been able to track down how much the USGS has spent so far, but they've been at it for, well, they stopped. You know, they started that process with the Rural Watershed Partnership and working on gathering up the data and beginning to develop a conceptual model. They've got 2 reports out so far through the conceptual model development. They started like 10 years ago, and then it got stopped because of the funding cuts. And then they finally got some more money, got the second report out. And it would probably be at least another 3 years if they got fully funded to do the groundwater model before the groundwater model would come out. And you know, again, it's around, just roughly around $1 million, I would think, to do that. That's a big, complicated area, though. a lot of impacts. So yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.